Hello and welcome to the Digital Digest, your weekly breakfast of insights, tips and tricks and general information that will help anyone trying to move things forward in this digital world of accounting. This show is brought to you by the Digital Disruptors and SB Digital, both of which are pushing the boundaries in the digital accounting space. I'm your host, and this episode is on Excel and Google automation. And I'm lucky enough to be joined by the wonderful James Grew, who I think is probably the expert in low code, no code work in the accounting space. So we're going to dive into that. We're hopefully going to show you a little bit of it, but appreciate these episodes are pretty short. So there's going to be lots that you may want to take away, reference and do some research on your own. But firstly, James, thank you for joining today. A little bit about you and how you got into what you do.
Oh, thanks for having me. Hi. I sort of got into it, not through a traditional angle. Basically, I sort of got into it from a frustration of my own accounts and my own accounting. And I basically wanted to automate that. And then I kind of got into sort of helping other people automate their processes. I guess I kind of describe myself as professionally lazy. I sort of try and find any solution possible to make my life easier and my clients' life easier. So I'm just always trying to find ways to automate and do something once and never have to do it again. So that's kind of how I got into it. And then I sort of keep on creating more and more things, and it kind of got out of hand. So here I am.
And that's what's made you kind of the expert. And we cross paths in the adopter space, in the systems advisory network that we run at Digital Disruptors. But I think the key phrase we're going to use is automation. This isn't AI. This isn't something where we're teaching a bot to do something. There's a lot of extraction of data, manipulation of data, and then putting data back up, isn't it? Solving those gaps that some of the software companies haven't filled themselves.
100%. I think there's a huge space for low code, and there's a huge, a lot of the time these are kind of edge cases. There are people that have a particular process in a business that isn't standard. No software company is going to spend millions of pounds to solve your one issue that only you in the world have got. So there's definitely, that's kind of where this comes in, and how you can automate those bits, if that makes sense. And really what can help. Just to improve.
We were discussing it earlier, and you gave a great example that I loved, which was the automated allocation of credit notes in Xero. The fact that you don't need to do that, I guess, all the time. It's usually a small part of what you do in accounting, but for some big entities, or that ones that have lots of credit notes, it can be such a frustration. So the ability to automate that through API calls is a big pain point for certain people that you can solve through automation.
No, 100%. Just like basic things. Like, I know another one that's highly frustrating is like voiding off voiding off invoices. If you've got a client that's gone rogue, or a software that's gone rogue and created 500 invoices, it's a very manual task. I've been there, I've done that, deleting off 500 invoices. That software can create 100 invoices like that, but equally there's bits out there that can automate voiding off of those invoices as well. It's just about what's there, and it's about sort of practicing and playing with what possibilities are. It's only going to get more open.
Yeah, definitely. And I think people in this space, in the accounting industry, would be surprised how much they already know. I mean, I do a lot of basic level automation. I don't have, I guess, a lot of the skills to pull down things through API, push them up. Used to use Datadeer, when it was around, to kind of extract information and manipulate it and push it back up. But the Excel tools, the Google sheet tools that a lot of accountants will already use, are, I guess, what we use as bread and butter for automation. So the basics of like pivot tables, just taking that like big data sets and manipulating them into the structure you want to see. The if statements, sum ifs, count A's, and then as we were discussing, like X lookups is a beautiful tool. Now, get rid of the V lookups, H lookups. X lookups is where to go. But I know that I focus mostly on Excel, and you focus mostly on Google, and I assume there'll be, or G Suite, there'll be different terminology that we both use. But is there any other formulas, I guess, that you use on the Google Sheets side that I guess mimicked in the Excel side?
Query is the kind of main one that I look up, which I think is a Power Query-esque in Excel. I use a bit of import range, I guess, in Google Sheets. One of the main advantages of using Google Sheets in the cloud, effectively, whereby you can have somebody inputting data on one sheet and that automatically sucks through to another sheet, sort of automatically on a sort of live basis. The kind of world's your oyster on sort of what the possibilities are. But yeah, I guess the main advantage for me around Google Sheets over sort of Excel is it being on the cloud. So I personally think it's a bit more secure, especially when I'm sharing documents with people. So a lot of the time I'm sharing a link to a document that I can always pull back. Whereas if you're sharing an Excel file, you can, unless it's password protected, you can never pull it back, if that makes sense. You can never stop that share. They've always got access to it. So that's kind of, and also just the ability with Google Sheets to jointly edit the same document. So especially with clients and that kind of thing, if I'm editing things at the same time.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
I use the Office 365 suite, and I think it's got similar functionality nowadays. But I know we could go into a whole debate about like Office 365 against Google, and I think the main thing that I've come through from talking to you, over the years is that there's very similar functionality across both, and you could probably actually use or achieve very similar things. There's always little blockers that you want to do, and I think it's a brilliant example. You're talking about like a Google API script that you use. Can you talk a little bit about that, James?
Yeah, so a lot of the time I'm pulling in data from automatically pulling in data. So a lot of the time what I'm doing is I'm sucking in data from a data source. So whether that be an outside bit of software like Harvest, or sort of anything that's got sort of APIs, so I'm sucking that in, or whether that be Zero using sort of Geocon to pull in that data, or just sort of raw data that's being downloaded. So I'm sucking that in, and I'm using API connector, I think, to pull that data in automatically into Google Sheets. So it's just again like cutting out that manual process of having to go and get the data from Zero or get the data from Harvest, or you can automate all of those processes now very easily, very cheaply. This isn't really expensive. I think API connectors £8 a month or something. So, and I think you can do a load of it for free. So you can automate those processes. So it's just about looking at what those processes are to automate to bring in the data.
Yeah,
And then once you've got the data in, you can then start to play with it. But half the battle is trying to get the data in the same format every time.
Definitely. And just, I guess, for reference, Geocon, brilliant tool that connects into, I guess, the financial suites and pulls into Google. And I don't believe it can pull into Excel at this point, right? It's Geocon
I
because of
don't
the
think so.
Google tool.
I think there is another example, but I can't think what it is for Excel. But
Well, I know it used to be, I guess, Datadeer was, the big one before it got bought
yeah,
by Intuit. And I know that another member of the earlier Dr. Sav, Raz, is also working on a tool to replicate, I guess, what Datadeer did. So I'm keeping my eyes and ears out for that one. But I think you do, I guess, you're very humble, James, in that you say things are easy. I think some of the stuff you do is not easy. You have to have a very, very structured mind and a vision, I think, of where you need to get to. I think, and any of this coding, low code stuff, you need to understand where you need to get to and have in your head kind of a map of tools of how you can manipulate data to get to that. And it'd be great for you to show us a little bit of that in a minute. But before we do that, a couple of things that you've touched on I want to just elaborate on. So Power Query, or Query in Google, is a very powerful tool to enable you to manipulate a lot of data in basically Excel or Google databases, but it is very complex. I've played with it. We're not going to dive into a lot of detail in this session. We just don't have the time. You could do an hour-long training session on that. And then Zapier is one where very good for pulling data down and pushing data up, has its limitations, hence why these API connectors are brilliant. But James, given where we are from a time perspective, I'd love it if you could share your screen and just run through an example of how you've used some of these tools.
yeah, sure. So this is a bit of software that I basically built for a particular client. And I run this all for a lot of different estate agents that have properties that basically manage properties and for client accounting. So basically, I'm using API exports to download the data into these sheets. So normally, when I structure a particular document, Google Sheet file. I use all of Google Sheets to manipulate all of the data. So I normally use an import function. So I normally number those as ones, just as a sort of thing. So these are all exports from the particular bit of software. I then use.
And I think structure is critical here, and repetition of structure. You need to always, to get your code to work, be pulling it down the same way each time into the same import sheets.
Completely. And also if you do leave or something happens, you need people to be able to understand where how the data is flowing, and what it uses. So then I use twos as a kind of data manipulator. So here you've got data coming in. This is where the formulas get a bit more complicated, but this is query. But again, all of these things look complicated, but actually, if you just break them down, they're kind of much easier. This is all going to break now because I'm going to do that. Just do that, and then you can then start to summarize the data. So then, these are all of my calculation steps, processes. And then under 3, this is then where I'm then pushing data back up to 0, sort of using Zapier. So basically the 3 steps are pulling the data in, manipulating the data, then sending the data back out again.
And so for manipulation, you're using Power Query or Query a lot, and then I guess you're using some of those formulas we touched on. So like the
so
sum,
you've got some sum ifs in here. You've got hyperlink is a kind of useful one here. So I've got links so that you can click directly on these and it will load up the invoice directly in Xero. I'm a big fan of deep linking if you're creating software, so that you can go immediately into that, rather than having to find that individual invoice in Xero. You can just click on it. It will automatically open up Xero. Very easy to do with the right structure. What other things I've got some text join things in here. Text formulas.
And text join,
so text join is
just
basically a way of when I'm doing this, I'm trying to create an invoice here with these 4 rows as line items, effectively, because they're all separate items, so that you can split them out. And so by using text join, you can split out, so that if I was to put in, it will put in an ampersand in between each one. So it's just a way of automating.
And that I guess segregation, because of the way you've built, is it Zapier or the API call or wherever it is?
So I'm using API connector to pull in the data, and then Zapier to push it back into Xero. So you could use
Brilliant.
API connector to do it. I just find it a bit more user friendly to use Zapier to push it back in.
That's right.
Really.
And the commas mean that you're basically creating a line each time for on exactly. That one invoice.
So for example, this one only has one line. So it has other for black, 209, that's the account number, then the amount is 21. This one has 2 lines. This one has...
And then the commas and amount then match the lines, etc. You've got that structure that goes all the way through.
Yeah, it's just about having uniform. And then you have basically a trigger. So once this, you'll see in here, this will then go to OK. This will then go OK. Zapier then goes, oh, OK, there's a new field here that we need to upload. And then it will then run its process. It will then send back. And then I use, just to continue the numbering, I use 7 as my calls back. So these are all of the invoice IDs and the invoice numbers that have been, once the invoice has been created in Xero, I then bring that information back. So that's how I can view it effectively in here. And then it means that...
So is it...
Once it's been created,
that's your verification process, right? That's where it comes into.
The first step in any Zap is normally, has this already been created? Is there already a cell in here? And if there is, don't create it again, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people miss when they start doing this, is that verification to prevent duplicates, to prevent the anonymous.
Yeah, no, I've been there before. Like this software, you can, if I wanted to, I could create 1,000 invoices like that very, very quickly. And it can be dangerous, really, if you don't know what you're doing, if that makes sense. But equally, there are just basic baby steps that you can do to make it automate as much as possible. The other thing I normally have on a spreadsheet is just an admin page. So this is just where the data. So I've got sort of account mappings in here, dates that I want to run certain processes on, These are then just all these are the API calls that I'm making, and various bits and pieces. So and this is a good example of where this particular client has a particular category where they want to split. They've got management fees that they're receiving 12 months in advance. So they want to split out that as an income in advance and then split that out over the next 12 months. So I've been able to build that as a sort of separate module to then, so I can go there. This then, splits out that, and reverses it back out from the income and advance account to the right month, and just will automate that whole process as an example. So sort of once you've done it once, you can then keep doing it.
And I think a key bit that you need to consider when setting out any of this is, what is the problem? How relatively simple or complex is it to solve? And how frequent is it going to be in the future? Because if it's a one-off piece of work that's going to be very complex, there's just no point doing it. If it's something where actually this could go across a large number of clients, or for this client themselves, it could be repetitive and going for a long period of time, you go, okay, well, it's worth the investment up front. And trying to estimate, I guess, how long it might take to build any of this is probably where a lot of people in this space will be like, I've no idea where to start, and I could end up, throwing endless hours into it. And I think actually one of the best things is to have someone like yourself in the space, James, that people could reach out to just for that gut feel of, you probably know, go, oh mate, that's going to take you weeks to build, or I could do that, knock it out in a couple of hours.
I guess, and again, I'm a natural optimist where I come from, and so I always go, oh yeah, that'd be really easy, and I like a really complicated, give me the most complicated thing going on. But yeah, it is complicated. I guess the other calculation to put into it is, what is the man hours that are going in to do this process? Those man hours may be going up, but the cost of those man hours is definitely going up. Minimum wage going up, and it's going to become more and more viable to put an upfront cost in to make these bit of software. Software. I come down in the morning, and as an example, let me see if I can share this. I look at this one spreadsheet and I see exactly what's been. So here, these are all the particular clients that I have using this one sort of piece of low-code software. I can see exactly which ones are broken, so I know that this one's missing. They've added a new account, so I just need to go into these individual ones and look and create the new accounts, and then go, thank you very much, and that's my day done. And it's done my day's work before I've even got up in the morning by creating all of the invoices automatically. So a lot of it is being able to look and see what you can do. A lot of what I do is very time intensive upfront work, and you have to be able to justify it in the back end. You may not get payoff for a year or so, but once you do, it's you want people to be doing higher value tasks. Software can be doing these really dumb, boring tasks automatically, and I want people in business to be doing the higher value things that computers can't do. Computers are so good now at what you can do, and you don't need a software. And I've got absolutely no training skills in this software, and I've just picked it up as I've gone along. I have a weird brain that kind of gets it, but
just know it.
But yeah.
Just loving the Excel Google formulas and building upon that over time, and then and then just expanding that into areas where if you understand that structure, you like doing it, you can solve these problems. But I think you've highlighted a couple of benefits here. If you niche and you're focusing on a certain sector and you've got pain points in that sector, you can solve it. If you've got certain areas, like we've done this for partial exemption VAT calculations, right? They're not all there, and there's no software that I'm aware of that does it perfectly, but be able to bring down that information, manipulate it, and push it back up in a digitally connected way, especially for MTD, is a perfect way of going. But one thing I'd like to ask, James, is if people watch this and they want to know, well, we've got this problem, can we fix it? Are people, you have people to reach out to you?
Yeah, you can find our website, automatedaccounting.co.uk. I think happy for people to jump on and have a discussion, see how I can help. Really, in any way, there's There's always a solution. That's my problem. I'm very bad at saying no, especially if people come with a very complicated problem. I like a really complicated problem. The easy stuff is, yeah.
Well, you've heard it here first. If you need if you need help with a really complicated accounting-based problem, James is the person to reach out to. And I think that feels like a great place to wrap up this week's show. So hopefully this episode has provided you with valuable insights you can take forward. Please do check out the show notes for links to Digital Disruptors, SB Digital, and James, etc., and anything we've discussed on the show. There are others in LinkedIn that are experts on Excel, Google Sheets, and please do follow them because they will give you the details of how to use specific formulas. We have not dived into this. It's been more of an overview of what's possible. But if you do want to ensure that you catch future episodes, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure you look out for the release on every Thursday morning. Look forward to speaking to you next week.